Now don't try and tell me that you don't have a box like this somewhere full of stuff that archaeologists will find interesting in 100 years time. Micro USB, mini USB, USB to type B connections. It's a mess. How am I supposed to know what any of these cables actually do? Well, that's where this device comes in. This is a $50 USB cable tester from Treedix. Now, to understand why this tester needs to exist, we need to take a quick trip through USB's increasingly ridiculous history. Back in 2000, USB 2.0 offered 480 megabits per second transfer rates. Then USB 3.0 arrived in 2008, increasing that to 5 gigabits. So far, perfectly straightforward. Then came the great renaming. When USB 3.1 appeared in 2013, that same 5 gigabit mode was relabeled USB 3.1 Gen 1. While a new Gen 2 mode offered 10 gigabits per second. Same capabilities, just new names, because apparently it wasn't confusing enough already. The USB connector specification itself was published in 2014, and it defined the small reversible 24-pin connector, along with systems for detecting cable orientation and negotiating power rolls. Apple's infamous 12-inch MacBook adopted USB-C only in 2015, supporting 5 gigabit USB only, not Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt 3 arrived later that year. It was the first Thunderbolt generation to use the USB-C connector, supporting up to 40 gigabits per second. Apple brought Thunderbolt 3 to the MacBook Pro in 2016, and then the USB 3.2 specification added a 20 gigabit mode and absorbed all previous USB 3.x specifications beneath one umbrella name. USB 4 followed in 2019, based partly on Thunderbolt technology contributed by Intel, and it supported 20 or 40 gigabit operation, but 40 gigs wasn't mandatory for every USB 4 host or device. Thunderbolt 4 arrived in 2020 with the same headline 40 gigabit speed, but the difference was stricter minimum requirements, including 32 gigabit PCIe data, support for two 4K displays, wake from a Thunderbolt dock, and DMA protection. So USB 4 and Thunderbolt 4 could use the same connector and advertise the same maximum speed, whilst guaranteeing very different capabilities. Power Delivery 3.1 raised the charging ceiling from 100 watts to 240 watts in 2021. But once again, a cable's power rating told you nothing about its data speed. Then USB 4 version 2.0 arrived in 2022, with up to 80 gigabits per second. Thunderbolt 5 followed in 2023, guaranteeing 80 gigabits and offering a similar 120 gigabit bandwidth boost mode. And that leaves us with a complete mess. Two cables that look identical can have completely different data, charging display, and Thunderbolt specifications. So let me show you what this $50 USB cable tester is capable of. On the side, we have an action button. This is like how you go through the menus. A power button, as well as a USB-C power input. So you can power this thing through a AAA battery or a USB-C power input. Then on one side, you have a nice clear screen to read what's going on. And then over here, you have so you connect one end of your cable here, like so. Let me just use this old 1+ cable. I'll connect the USB-A end of this cable here. And then on the bottom, you can see that we've got a USB mini input, or is it a micro USB input, the fancy USB 3 connector that was used for some external hard drives for a little while, but not for very long. Then USB-C itself, which is capable of testing Thunderbolt cables as well. And mini USB, as well as a lightning port connector here as well. So testing a cable is really simple. You connect the Type A end here, the Type C end in here like this, and then you press the action button on the side of the device, and it performs a test to show you what the cable is capable of. In this case, you can see that this old 1+ cable is only capable of USB 2.0 speeds. It isn't officially capable of power transmission because, well, it can, of course, it can supply power, but it doesn't support the USB power delivery standard, presumably because this is one of my old 1+ cables, and they went off down their own thing and did their own like fast charging protocol thing that wasn't really part of the PD spec. If we press the button again, we get through to another screen. This one shows us all of the different pinouts inside this connector right here. Not this one. Obviously, it's not testing this one. It's just testing at the bottom here. So that anything connected here will reflect on the screen right here. And you can see all the power connectors. You can see that some of the data lines are hooked up with B6 and B7. So we know this cable can do power and data. But let's take a look at a cable that can only do power. This one came with my 8-bit Do game controller a few weeks ago. It feels nice, it's got good build quality, it's a supple cable. But look, it's literally only got power hooked up. So you've got ground, V-bus, and that's it. So if I click through the menus one more time, we get to this screen here, which is a resistance test. That can be useful to test things like whether the cable's shorting out or not. But going through, we won't look at the eMarker just yet. We'll come to that in just a second. But you can see data transmission, none. I now actually know not to reach for this cable in a hurry when I'm trying to update some kind of an ESP32 device in a hurry. It also doesn't support power delivery transmission. So now I know that. Let's take a look though at this cable. This is an Anker, a high-end braided cable that I've had for many years. In fact, I've charged my MacBook for hundreds, thousands of hours probably with this cable. But if I plug this in to the tester like so, you can see that this fancy looking cable, you know, it's an expensive Anker braided cable, only does USB 2.0 transmission speeds. It does, however, support the full gamut of power delivery and power transmission standards, which is really nice. If we go through though to this screen, we can see all the extra pins that are hooked up. But let's take a look at the eMarker screen. This is where USB actually starts to become pretty useful. This cable has a chip embedded into the connector that actually communicates with the device that it's hooked up to. So it will tell this device that, hey, I'm a passive cable. I am capable of providing power at 5 amps over 50 volts, which obviously works out to about 240 watts. I am only capable though of USB 2.0 data transmission speeds, and here's my vendor information. And that's all housed in a tiny, tiny little chip inside the housing right there. And so if we hook up, say, a Thunderbolt cable, I happen to have a Thunderbolt 5 cable here that came with one of my Thunderbolt docks. I hook this one up. This is a 240 watt rated Thunderbolt 5 cable, best of the best with honours, sir. And this one, you can see, look, it advertises everything. We've got 80 gigabits per second, USB 4, Gen 4, Thunderbolt 5 at 80 gigabits per second, 50 volts at 5 amps. Right, this is really like as good as it gets. Like, you get all the green lights on this page. The resistance is good. And I can see that there's no shorts, there's no issues with this cable whatsoever. Because I got tired of like trying to hook up a high performance SSD or something like that that supports 10 gigabits per second and getting a dribble of data going through this thing. Let's take a look at one more cable. I do have a Lightning one here. I'm just curious what this is going to show. It's USB on one end, USB-C, and Lightning on the other. Hook that one up there and press the button. And you see we get USB 2.0, thank you Apple, but it does support power delivery of less than 65 watts. Interesting. Lightning, okay, it's good. It's got its own little screen. And then under the eMarker, okay, it doesn't support that at all. Well, there you go. Little $50 cable tester. I can now go through my box of cables and figure out which ones I should actually keep and which ones are pretty much junk. The trouble is really, manufacturers aren't incentivized to provide you with high quality cables. They are incentivized to provide you with the bare minimum cable to get their product working. 8-bit Do being a perfect example. Very premium game controller. How much did them providing me a charge-only cable, how much did that save them? A few cents per cable? I honestly don't know, but I don't imagine it's much. And now I have this cable that is basically single purpose. I can only charge, not power delivery speeds. I don't know. I just wish the incentives were not quite as perverse as they are. Anyway, this is the Treedix USB cable tester. I'll put a link to it down in the description down below. It'll be an affiliate link if you want to help support the channel. And enjoy playing around and digging through all your old cables like I have this week. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I've been Alex from KTZ Systems.